I'm Jack Bradley, filling in for Steve Lance tonight. And the U.S. will be well equipped in the event of a war with China. That's what President Trump says as he unveils a sixth-generation fighter jet. And TD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has more.
There's never been a plane designed or made like this, and we'll have them within about a 2-year period.
In a bid to strengthen American air dominance, President Trump unveiling a new U.S. fighter jet, the F-47. And President Trump says Boeing will be the Pentagon's choice to develop this next-generation high-tech fighter jet, which he says will be virtually unseeable and have unprecedented power.
The F-47 will be the most advanced, most capable, most lethal aircraft ever built.
As the president highlights the need to strengthen U.S. defense capabilities, he also denies a New York Times report that says Elon Musk will get a top-secret briefing this morning about potential war plans with China. Trump says Musk was at the Pentagon to talk about cutting costs and that the New York Times keeps publishing fake stories.
It's such a dishonest newspaper. It's such garbage. They have fake sources, or they don't have sources. I think they make most of it up. But this was a made-up story by the New York Times. I call it the failing. It's a failing newspaper. They really are the enemy of the people.
President Trump asked that he will not show such war plans to anyone, especially Musk, who could have a conflict of interest.
Elon has businesses in China, and he would be susceptible perhaps to that.
Meanwhile, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth further alleges that the New York Times did it on purpose.
It was meant to sort of undermine whatever relationship the Pentagon has with Elon Musk.
As both Trump and Hegseth emphasize U.S. military capabilities, Trump says he does not want a war with China. But if it happens, the U.S. will be very well equipped. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
And Trump says that the Small Business Administration will take up the Department of Education's student loan portfolio. His announcement comes less than a day after he signed an executive order beginning the process of dismantling the department.
I've decided that the SBA, the Small Business Administration, headed by Kelly Loeffler, is a terrific person, will handle all of the student loan portfolio. We have a portfolio that's very large, lots of loans.
According to two sources, the student loan portfolio totals a staggering $1.8 trillion in debt, and an estimated 40% of loans are past due. Trump also announced that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the Department of Health and Human Services under him will lead funding efforts for special needs students. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche confirmed in a court filing today that the Justice Department is set to invoke a state secrets privilege in the showdown with a federal judge. NTD's Arlene Richards has the details.
In a court filing on Friday, the Justice Department confirmed that it might invoke the state secrets privilege to not comply with the judge's order. Judge James Boasberg is challenging the department's use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelan immigrants they believe are members of terrorist group Tren de Aragua. At a press conference Friday, President Trump told a reporter he doesn't need the judge's permission to deport them.
Well, that's what the law says, and that's what our country needs, because unfortunately, they allowed millions of people to come into our country, totally unvetted, totally unchecked. So when you ask me if we have the authority, did Biden have the authority to allow millions of people to come into our country? Many of these people, hardened criminals at the top of the line who have caused tremendous damage in our country.
The state secrets privilege allows government lawyers to exclude evidence based solely on declarations that it might disclose sensitive information and endanger national security. Meanwhile, at a hearing Friday afternoon, Boasberg conceded that the president has wide latitude to make decisions involving national security. Nonetheless, he repeatedly asked the Justice Department attorney if he understood the judge's order to turn around 3 planes transporting the immigrants to El Salvador. The judge said he would get to the bottom of whether or not the Trump administration failed to comply with his order and what the consequences should be. The attorneys representing the immigrants contend that not all of them are members of the group, and they had the right to a hearing to determine that. Boasberg suggested that he did have authority to determine if they were members or not. The government argued the matter should be heard in a different court. Boasberg didn't make a ruling, but hinted that he may be open to revising his temporary restraining order, which bars the government from deporting anyone under the Alien Enemies Act. Boasberg is likely to permit the administration to continue deporting individuals under other immigration laws, but he said they can't rely upon the Alien Enemies Act. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
The State Department announces sanctions on Chinese and Iranian firms tied to oil trade between the two countries. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has the update.
Sanctions are being imposed on an oil facility in China for allegedly buying and selling Iranian oil.
For the first time, the United States is sanctioning a so-called teapot refinery in China for purchasing millions of barrels of oil worth approximately $500 million.
Sanctions were also announced on several entities and vessels in Iran's shadow fleet for selling oil to China.
Iran's behavior across the globe threatens U.S. national security interests.
The move is part of President Trump's maximum pressure campaign, according to State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce.
President Trump has reimposed a maximum pressure campaign designed to end Iran's nuclear threat, curtail its ballistic missile program, and stop it from supporting terrorist groups.
Bruce also announced the arrival of recently released Taliban hostage George Glassman to the U.S.
George was wrongfully detained in Afghanistan for 2.5 years. He arrived at Joint Base Andrews earlier today, where he was greeted by his wife and a small welcoming party.
Additionally, Bruce announced that Honduras will be extraditing a suspect to the U.S. to face trial for the death of American woman Sarah Root.
Sarah Root was tragically murdered in 2018 by an illegal alien who was driving under the influence and became a fugitive from justice.
Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
Lawmakers making an effort to combat China's secret police in the U.S. We're happy to have on with us Gordon Chang, author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Gordon Chang, thank you very much for joining us here today.
Oh, thank you.
House lawmakers are seeking to crack down on China's secret police stations in the U.S. This effort's called the Expel Illegal Chinese Police Act, which would let the president sanction or restrict anyone involved with these stations. Now, first, how are these stations operating and what have we learned about them?
Well, we know that the FBI closed down one of these stations in Chinatown in New York, but according to various reporting from the New York Post and the Daily Caller, there could be 7 to 9 more of these, and they're spread throughout the United States. So we know that these exist. We know that they provide services that violate the terms of the Vienna Convention. We know that they're violating our sovereignty. And in some of these cases, we know that Chinese agents are violating American law by their activities from these police stations. And the fact that we've allowed this to continue for so long really says a lot about us. So this issue now is not so much about China, although China's activities are unacceptable. It's really about us for permitting this to continue.
These police stations are known to carry out illegal intimidation tactics. How does this undermine U.S. sovereignty?
Well, we know that they go after ethnic Chinese, not only Chinese nationals who are in the United States, but also American citizens of Chinese descent. And they intimidate and coerce them by saying that they will act against relatives back in China. So that's one of the things that they often do. And that means that they get ethnic Chinese to commit acts of espionage and to do other things that are against our interests and violation of our law. And we know this practice has been going on for decades.
And just yesterday, a New York businessman was sentenced for trying to repatriate alleged fugitives and dissidents to China. Now, it's part of an initiative being called Operation Fox Hunt. What is the Chinese Communist Party's end goal here?
They want to prevent people from leaving China by convincing everybody that there are no safe havens in the world. And of course, this also tars the United States' reputation as being the home of the free and the land of the brave. So clearly what they're doing is they're, first of all, acting against their own citizens, but then they're also got a broader propaganda goal.
Now, why are these overseas operations an important part of the Chinese Communist Party's strategy?
Well, China's goals is to rule the world, not control, not dominate, not to exert hegemony over, but to rule the world. And so what these are outposts, an intermediary step in that. I mean, China wants to convince everybody that it has the right to do whatever it wants, wherever it wants. And so far, they've been pretty good at intimidating people because it's not just the United States, it's other democracies as well. So China is along its goals of being able to exert not only influence, but its laws in other countries.
And what can the U.S. do to proactively counter these efforts?
Well, first of all, we can close these police stations, but we also need to either imprison or expel those who have been a part of this. And we could do other things which are asymmetric. So, for instance, tariffs. Or we could close Chinese consulates, which we should do anyway, because they're also violating the terms of their status in the United States. So there are a lot of things that we can do. We got the range of it. China has many, many points of contact in the United States. We can cut those points of contact, as we should anyway.
And you mentioned tariffs. How effective can tariffs be to counter Chinese influence?
I think it can be extremely effective. Xi Jinping has turned his back on consumption as being the basis of the Chinese economy, which means he has only one plan to rescue a grim situation, which is to export more. The United States is the world's biggest market. It cannot be replaced in the short or even in the intermediate term. So basically, Xi Jinping has put his fate and the fate of the regime in the hands of the United States. And we should be exercising that power because the Chinese have given it to us. And why we don't is beyond me.
House lawmakers have also introduced the Block Organ Transplant Purchases from China Act. Now, this is to ensure that Americans are not unknowingly complicit in Beijing's systematic forced organ harvesting targeting prisoners of conscience. What message does this send to the Chinese Communist Party?
Well, I think the United States should block all organ transfers of Americans in China, just because it's wrong. We know that virtually all, if not all, of these organs are obtained under conditions which would violate medical ethics and laws in other countries. There should be no American getting an organ transplant in China. So it shows to the Chinese that we're not really that serious. I mean, we haven't even enacted this, even though we've known this practice has been going on for decades. This is grisly, this is gruesome, this is basically a crime against humanity, and we have let it continue.
Gordon Chang, thank you very much for your insights here today.
Thank you.
Who killed JFK is still up for debate among experts. This is even after President Trump declassified the JFK assassination files. The Trump administration digitized and added another nearly 14,000 unredacted pages of those files to the archives today. Now that brings the total to nearly 80,000 pages of unredacted documents.
I don't think there's anything that's earth-shattering, but you'll have to make that determination. In those, it's 80,000, it's actually 88,000, and we have some additional things, as you know, come out today. And for that, you can go to the offices and you can see whatever you want to see. Everything is out there, totally open.
The JFK files revealed the CIA was surveilling Lee Harvey Oswald's travel. One expert, Philip Shannon, says that the documents did not reveal any bombshells. Reporter, author, and JFK researcher Jefferson Morley says that the records show the CIA was complicit in former President Kennedy's assassination.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.